Hello! Welcome to Why Not Both, the podcast all about how our multiple passions and interests shape our identity and our lives. My name is Pam Schaefer, and I am a musician and therapist in Los Angeles, and I also happen to be your host. This podcast is produced by Laura Studeris, and for this season, we've partnered up with Under the Radar magazine. If you like what you hear, you can hang out with us on social media. We are on Twitter and Instagram at WNB the podcast. And if you really, really like what you hear, please support us on Patreon. We are under Why Not Both podcast. When you join our Patreon, you get a whole bunch of really cool behind the scenes stuff and you get to chat with us. And that's pretty awesome. Thank you so much for your support, and I hope you enjoy our interviews. For this week's episode, we are joined by Jonas from the band Mew. I hope that you enjoy our interview. Well, welcome to Why Not Both.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course, thank you for coming. It was really cool getting to see the stuff that you sent over to our wonderful producer. It looks like you've been up to a lot of different things.
Yeah, I spread myself thin for a lot of different things. Yeah.
What inspires you to do so, and what's been kind of like the most compelling thing that you've been working on lately?
Well, right now I'm working on a film score for a documentary film.
Ooh.
Which takes place in Zimbabwe.
Wow.
It's very exciting. And it's kind of like crunch time now for me. So I'm working like 16 hours a day on recording the last bits of strings and all that stuff. So it's quite, that's been keeping me busy for the last like month or so, couple of months.
Yes. Yeah.
And then of course we just released recently the first single from my project with Tobias from Blue Foundation. We call ourselves Takis.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're setting up some more songs for release, and that's very exciting.
Ooh.
It's been a weird year and a half because a lot of the plans that we had for touring just kind of fell through because of COVID. So all of a sudden there was all this free time to do other stuff. So we thought we'd make the most of it,
Yeah. And were you? It's so strange because when you were talking about like scoring the documentary, I was like, oh, did you get a chance to meet the people who made it, or what was the process of that like? Because I'd assume that a lot of that would be remote, like you'd be getting scenes and then scoring them, but usually you'd be in the same room with someone to get feedback and whatnot.
Yeah, there was a bit of a lockdown here right around the time that they hired me to do this. So the first initial meetings were via Zoom. But actually, it's not so bad here now, and so you can meet people. And I had my first vaccination shot, getting the second one a couple of weeks from now. So it's been all right. It's getting better. We're still having shows canceled though this year, even though they're still a bit way off. So it's a little bit different from country to country, I guess,
Yeah, I feel like in some ways, like everything's happening asynchronously, and yet we all have had some sort of flavor of it. I started calling it like lockdown hot potato, where you have to like pass the potato to someone else, and it's like, well, we're out of lockdown. Oh wait, no, you.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't been doing much traveling in the last year and a half. I usually travel a lot, so that's been a bit weird, just being home.
Yeah. How did that change what you ended up writing? Because though we did have more, in a way we had more free time, but it was covered with this like patina of strangeness and anxiety. And also if you are used to being out and about and traveling, all of a sudden you're like, oh no, I'm at home.
Yeah. Well, I me and Toby have been talking about we kind of work together a lot in the past, just on different things, but we've been talking for a few years about doing a real project together, and it happened that because of the lockdown, I wanted to get like a studio that was sort of separate from everything, so I rented a place which was very near his studio, and then we were kind of neighbors for a while, and then working on different things, and then we sort of started sending ideas back and forth, and then it became this Takis project. So I think, if it hadn't been for COVID, we probably we still wouldn't have found the time to do it. So it's you got to look at on the bright side, but of course it's a disaster on a global scale, but you have to make the most of things.
I agree. Like, I was talking to someone about dealing with the idea that so much tragedy has happened, but also that like humans are adaptable. And in that tragedy, it's like we do have to find what a silver lining is in a way, because otherwise, why would you keep going?
Yeah, that's very true. It's a big part of life,
Yeah, it's like acknowledging both, and like in a way, it did give you this gift of being able to collaborate together. It's so funny that you were like, yeah, I became their neighbor, and
yeah, it's kind of random almost the way it happened. Yeah,
that happened to a lot of people I've been talking to this year. That they found themselves really almost like discovering things anew, either in their own environment, or that they were kind of like, I don't know, like stuck with people that they didn't expect to be stuck with, not in a bad way, but like they were pleasantly surprised by what emerged when they...
Sometimes in a bad way, I think.
I don't know if you saw any couples during this period of... I work with people in like counseling and whatnot and therapy, and couples during this time either like became like the most solid couples in the world, or they like imploded. It was really fascinating to watch.
No, it's I've seen a lot of that too. So I guess it's kind of like a test on relationships, a test of the core strength of a relationship.
And I guess what was the collaboration like with your friend for Takis? Because I was like, okay, you had been planning on doing that for a while, and then you did kind of get stuck together. So that is an interesting test of being like, well, I guess we're here.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've known Toby. Actually, the first ever band that I was in was called The Orange Dog, and it was with Toby and a bunch of some of the other kids who ended up being in Mew. And it's we always played together, back and forth, and did remixes for each other, that kind of thing. And so we're kind of similar in the way that we do a lot of different things. He's also a photographer and does a lot of video stuff and music videos and things. So we kind of have that in common.
Mm-hmm.
Because we have that in common, that we work on several different aspects of what it means to, release music, like visual content and video stuff and things. So we can do a lot of it ourselves. And, we've been self-releasing and taking care of that. He's a little more, oriented with this sort of like figuring out how to set up releases and label stuff. He's had his own label for a while. So I'm not really that into that, but that's cool that he can take care of that part,
That is good to have a bandmate who does that.
Exactly. I always think you should get a band, like when you put your band together, you should get a lawyer and an accountant and anyone to take care of all this stuff, and then if they can play music, it's just an added bonus.
I was joking with one of my friends about that, where like sometimes being a musician, like by the time you actually get to make the music, you're like, oh, what a luxury.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes it's like that. Yeah, definitely.
That's really funny. And when you were talking about the visuals, I was watching like the videos you had sent, and I find especially now, because of how we distribute music, the visuals are so important. Like I almost feel like either you have to be a visual artist yourself or have really good collaborative skills with visual artists in order to get people to listen to your music.
True. And I always found it very fascinating how that melds together. Ever since I was a kid, I watched the Beatles, the Yellow Submarine cartoon. Have you ever seen that?
Yeah.
And I watched that with my dad, and I think that was the first time that I kind of realized that you could do so many different things and put it all together, and I've been, this was also really part of the inspiration I had to start making visuals when we tour with Mew. I designed these animated shows for our concerts, and it's just like, it's also kind of an excuse, as a front guy, like the lead singer guy in a band. I thought maybe it'll take some of the attention away from me, because, and then I can just look at my shoes and sing the mic, and then they can look at something exciting behind me. That.
There you go.
That was part of it as well. But I think it's a lot of fun to mix things up like that and do different things with it.
Yeah, because some people want the visual to be themselves, like they want to be like, more of a performer, or have that be the focus. But I think equally important, what you're saying is like, you actually wanted the focus to be on like, hey, I made this really beautiful visual that accompanies that. I'm going to be playing like 17 things and staring at my feet. So here, look at what I made that matches the music. That's the performance.
Yeah, that's much more exciting than looking at me.
Yeah. I joke about that sometimes too. I'm like, it can't be that exciting to watch me like try and figure out how to play like 3 synthesizers at the same time. Like that's not exciting. Like it's looking at me concentrating really hard.
What kind of synthesizers are you into?
It's funny. I'm house sitting for a friend, and I was like, what do I bring with me? And I brought my Roland HS60, which is basically the Juno 106, but in a hardier case.
Right.
And my Moog grandmother.
Oh wow, that's nice.
Thanks.
But I got really into Eurorack, and it's kind of addictive. It's funny. Like I was thinking the other day, like when I was a kid, I was really into collecting Star Wars figurines. And it was like that was the first thing that I collected, and this gives me the same kind of thrill. When buying a new module, it's like, wow, now I have this one, then I can do this, and it's like the game becomes a little more fun every time.
Yes, and like who was I talking to? I was talking to someone about how like it is almost like when you start getting into a certain lane of music, like gear collection becomes like, it is almost like when you were a kid, when you're like, I want to collect these cards, or like, ooh, look at these nice stickers, except the things that you collect make stuff. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
I
agree.
That's what's so exciting. I was like, oh my God, you're into modulars. I have so much respect for it. The modulars look magical to me. Like I'm just starting to use like the patch cables on the Moog grandmother as kind of my I'm using it as my like gateway drug to modulars.
Yeah, I've seen that for a lot of people, and it is there are companies starting to make less expensive stuff, but I guess the problem with Eurorack is that it's made in such small quantities that it's quite expensive to produce.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of fun, and it's so you have so many happy accidents with it.
Yes, for me at least, like that's the magic of modular and even just like analog synthesis is occasionally you're just like, I can aim for something, but I don't always know exactly what's going to come out.
Exactly. Yeah. And then you're sort of the curator for like, this is cool, this sounds good, I'm going to keep that and then put it together with this. But, you kind of choose what to keep and what not to keep,
Yes. Does that ever happen when you're working on visual effects, when like things just like weirdly surprise you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because the way that I create animations is a little bit like modular. It's like batch-oriented software where you can sort of put things together in a long string and then do a bunch of different things with it, and then all of a sudden it looks crazy, And sometimes you program stuff and you don't really know what it's going to look like. You just write in the line of coding and then you play it, and it's like it's not at all what I was trying to make, but it looks really cool. So yeah, definitely. I love happy accidents. That's a big, I always thought like if you just have an idea and you put it all together in your head, then all that's left to do is just to sort of do it, to sort of record it. And that's not as fun as having all these surprises while you're recording,
Yeah, it's like definitely having some sort of a framework in mind to hang it off of. But I'm similar, where I really like being like, all right, I'm going to aim for something, but I'm not going to aim for something so specific that I'm not going to pay attention to the fun things that accidentally happen along the way.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you have to be very focused if you have a deadline or something, and then you sort of, I like the different sort of it's like a different form of what do you call it? It's a different discipline, to do it that way, and both things are enjoyable. I think that's also like I like doing a bunch of different things because you get to sort of live out different parts of it, like when I work on a film, it's about making music that works with the scene. It's not so much about expressing myself or sort of presenting this is the most me that anything can be. It's more about sort of like almost like a craftsmanship, although it's still artistic. It's just a different discipline, and that's really enjoyable as well.
Yeah, like especially because you're really looking for what serves the scene, and so in a way you're kind of putting yourself to the side. Like you are using like all of your skills and your intuition there, but it's like you're almost focusing on like, oh, well, how do I channel what's best for this visual representation, which sounds almost like the inverse of what you were doing when you created visuals for your music.
Right. Yeah, very true.
That's interesting. How did you get into film scoring?
I'd done a little bit of stuff over the years, mostly like for short films and things. And then it's kind of just grew from there. And then, a director that I'd done a short movie for asked me to do, something for a longer thing. And then there was a really big documentary series in Scandinavia about a boat that caught on fire, or they don't really know if it was an arsonist who did it or scam, but a lot of people died. It was like in 1990 for a TV series about that.
Oh my god!
It was really an intense 8 months of work, and but I find it really enjoyable, and it's nice somehow to be able to do things from home sometimes. Because I'm quite used to just traveling a lot and sleeping on tour buses and things. And this feels a little more grown up in a way. I feel more like a grown up person, just working in my home office or like studio.
Right.
Yeah.
It's interesting. You're not the first musician I've talked to about that this year. One, we all got the experience of, oh, surprise, I'm at home forever. But also this transition of kind of like touring to either being in the studio at home or scoring things at home. And like, there's almost this balance, like, and it's so strange. I don't think it's tied to a particular age range necessarily, but I did notice that like, I even felt the same way where like, when I was like 20, I was just like, oh my God, I want to play like 1 million shows. And now I'm just like, I would like to sit under a tree and, perform this flute score.
Right. It could mindset.
Be better. And it's not that like I never want to play shows again. This experience actually made me want to play a show for the first time in like years, which I was like, oh, surprise. I actually feel like carrying my gear around.
Right. Well, if you've been gone for a while, then,
Yeah.
And, I think also it's human nature when you tour a lot, you start sort of bitching about it a little bit and being sort of like, oh, this is so hard and I miss home and things. And then when you, the last show I played, at least with Mew, was like in November 18. So
Oh, wow.
a long time ago, you know.
Wow.
Because I was determined that in 2019 I wanted to have a break from the band and do some other stuff. And then we were supposed to really just tour a lot in 2020, and then of course that all fell away.
Surprise!
Yeah,
surprise.
So it's been an unintentionally long break, you know.
Yeah. Well, and you guys, I mean, you were on tour a ton then.
Well, yeah, we were. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's been. Well, I mean, we usually do like maybe 100 shows in a year or something like that, you know.
That's like a third of the year.
Yeah, and it actually becomes more because there's a lot of travel days as well, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, but actually in 18 we didn't play that many shows. It was like an anniversary tour where we played like one of our albums from start to finish. So we didn't do like a whole tour like that.
Gotcha.
But usually we do. Yeah.
What was it like getting to, I guess in a way, like write from a different place? Because if you had been really like leading the lifestyle of like touring and whatnot, I don't know, did it affect you at all being in a stationary place while you were working on this record?
On the Takis record, you mean?
Yeah.
Or well, actually, the last Mew album we also did in Copenhagen.
Oh.
And it was very comfortable, but I think that we all missed a little bit of the adventure of going somewhere else to record, you know? So I think that the next time we'll probably, I'd like to go somewhere that you wouldn't necessarily connect with recording music so much, you know, like someplace exotic would be fun, you know.
That's like Olafur Arnalds.
Yeah, of course.
He's from Reykjavik, and he spent a good portion of this year, I believe, in Indonesia.
Oh.
So when I interviewed him, it was just really funny because we ended up, he's like, you can publish the interview like as long as you answer one question correctly. And I was like, me, I have to answer the question correctly? And he's like, yes. He's just like, what are your feelings on Licorice?
What are your feelings on Licorice?
What's really funny is I hate American licorice. I think it's disgusting, but I love Icelandic licorice, and I've now tried like Swedish licorice, and like I'm like kind of into it.
Okay.
Like, yeah, it was really funny. He's like, okay, you passed. And so he actually sent me a bag of like some of my favorite like Icelandic licorice snacks, which was so sweet.
Okay, well, I have to give you some licorice background here, some information, which is like in Iceland, their big thing is combining licorice with chocolate.
Yes.
This is a very unusual thing, and none of the other Nordic countries do that. It's very, very bizarre. Yeah. I'm not quite sure I like it actually, but I kind of like it. I'm ambivalent about it, you know. But the really interesting licorice is the from Finland.
Oh.
Which is the really strong salty kind, you know.
I like the salty bits. Yes.
You know, we used to make that in physics class. You take hydrochloric acid and ammonium, and then you put it together, and then you with electrolysis you add power to it, and it separates, or it combines them obviously, and then it becomes something called, we call it salmiak. I don't know what the English term is for it.
Whoa.
But it's like a white powder. And this is what they use for the licorice to make it salty. And it's actually really bad for you. It gives you high blood pressure. And it's really unhealthy to eat. But it's somehow legal, or it's not like it's not against regulations. So, but if you eat a lot of it, you will feel very ill. You know. But they're the masters of that in Finland. They have the saltiest licorice. Too salty even for me.
I mean, I guess in moderation, if it's just like a special treat, then it would be okay. But I could imagine, if you ate that much salt, that would raise your blood pressure.
I once like brought our Japanese label as a present to two different things, One is like Gammeldansk, which is like a Danish liqueur. It's not so different from Jägermeister, but it's a little more medicine-y tasting.
Yeah.
You know, it's like it tastes like old medicine. It's kind of enjoyable, but it's also really bad. But we brought that, and they kind of drank that in out of politeness. But then I also brought this salty licorice, and they just could not. They couldn't. They had to spit it out. It was just too much for them, and they were kind of embarrassed about it. But I kind of wanted them to, because they'd been very nice to us and taken us out, and they tried some.
Oh my God!
Food, you know, yeah.
That is hilarious. I love like cultural snack exchanges.
Yeah.
Because I sent. Next time I see Ollie, I'll bring some over because we were talking about our favorite snacks. But one of my other friends in Reykjavik, I sent him spiced dried mango. He'd never had it. Whereas whereas here it's really
spiced.
Yeah, like
okay. They do have some things in Nordic countries that I haven't gotten myself to actually try. One of them is surströmming, which is basically rotten fish.
Oh yeah, like lutefisk. I've never tried it because I can't get near it. Like my body goes no.
Yeah, absolutely. And they have something in Japan called natto. Have you heard of this?
Is that the like fermented the soybeans where it's like the soybean thing?
Fermented bean curd. Yeah, it's very, very smelly. It's like kind of similar. It's like you smell it and your body goes like, nope, that's not. Don't put that in me. You know. But it's supposedly very healthy to eat it because it's got all these healthy bacteria in it or something for your stomach. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I can't do it.
Food chemistry is so interesting. When you're describing what you did in chemistry class, I was like, why was my chemistry class not that interesting?
Wow.
Maybe I would have, it's so funny. I was like, maybe I would have gotten an A instead of a B plus. Whenever I wasn't interested in a class, I would just like get enough that I would get like a B plus or an A minus. But if I was really interested, that's when I would really, pull out all the stops.
Right. Yeah, we had an interesting physics also in high school in physics class. I looked at a piece of cheese through a microscope. And that actually made me not ever want to eat cheese again, because it's just a sea of living things. It's disgusting. Yeah. But at least you should melt it first, and at least they're dead. They're not falling apart anymore.
Is that their secret vendetta to make you vegan?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that is so funny. I'm just imagining like teachers plotting, being like, yes, we need to help with climate change and therefore we need to consume fewer animal products. How will we get this message across?
That wasn't even on our radar back then, like the climate change thing. It was, I think at that point, people were still talking about acid rain. That was the
I
big
do
concern.
remember that. I remember the acid rain phase. And it's interesting thinking about like, as we're now witnessing like strange cataclysmic events like COVID and climate and whatnot, like thinking back, at least in my childhood, like I thought that recycling was so hyped that I thought that recycling was like the way. Was that the same like where you were, or? It's gotten pretty big here. In Sweden are doing amazingly. There's like, I think only 1% of their energy is not bio fuel. I don't know. They're doing tremendously well. Wow.
Denmark is a little behind, but we're kind of getting there. I do think actually, I think recycling is extremely important. And I do recycle, but it's getting more and more sort of you have to sort your trash a lot more now, which is great. I don't mind doing that, but yeah.
It's interesting how like kind of that macrocosm of how do we be in this world, as obviously people kind of messed up a whole bunch. She says with dramatic understatement. And it's like, how do we be in this world and then be artists? Like, because thinking about even that you were touring so much and now you're stationary for a while, it's like, I wonder how people will rethink touring. Now people are almost, I've seen this like frenzy of shows being scheduled, and I'm like, is that the way? Like, is that the way we're supposed to go? Is that like?
Well, I actually, the sort of group of people here in Denmark that I feel the most sorry for. I mean, obviously on a global scale, there are countries that are just devastated by this, and we are sort of nowhere near that here. But the group of people I do feel kind of bad for are the really young people, because they kind of missed like almost 2 years of their sort of youth, being social with each other and not being able to go to school. And I mean, that must have really sucked, for them. So I feel bad for them. But
that's interesting that you bring that up, because that is like, especially when people are going to school or when people are just launching into the world, and then it's like, nope, no launching for you.
Yeah. For me, on a personal level, the most kind of frustrating thing has been, with the canceled tour, obviously has been a disappointment, but then also this like, well, these shows are happening, and then, getting an offer to do a film score and saying, oh, no, I can't, I'm going on tour. And then the tour didn't happen, that kind of thing has been really a bummer sometimes,
Yeah. Those occupy such different parts of, basically it would be like such different parts of you in general, of like the commitment to a film score versus tour. And you can't do both of those at the same time.
No. I mean, we tried once to write songs on tour. I mean, we did a little bit actually, but it's very difficult for us to write on tour. It's not something that we do in general. It's kind of like when you're on tour, and there's a lot of, you have in stores and you have interviews and sound checks and then, but I actually do enjoy being on tour, that I get a lot of time to read.
Yeah.
Because when I'm at home, I never have time to read. So that's kind of, it's like a luxury. Just I have a day off in Idaho. I'm gonna just read a novel and maybe hang out at the mall a little bit. That kind of thing.
Oh,
it's fun.
Yeah, like the luxury of time. That's so funny that you said, oh, I don't have time to read. I'm just looking at like 4 books that I have like right in my immediate environment that I'm in various places of each of them. But I have to like consciously give myself that time and remind myself that it's okay to have that time in a way. Like I put it on my, I have like a to-do list that's like my whiteboard, and I will put it on my board, like read books, to remind myself just as valuable to like, be like answering emails and editing podcasts and whatever it is I'm doing. But that it's also important to be like, I'm gonna take like half an hour and read a book and see how that goes. And if I want to, I might take another half an hour. I might take a whole hour.
Exactly. Yeah. It's such a luxury. I always have these pangs of guilt if I'm at home and I want to sit out on my balcony and read a book or something. I'm like, nah, I should be looking at that. I should be answering this email. I should this and that, But there's something about being on tour where you're like, you're just here and there's nothing you can do really. So whatever you want to do, you can just do it, It's a little bit like when you get a gift card for a shop and you sort of like, okay, I would never spend this money on this, but I have to spend this gift card. So I'll just get this stuff that I don't really need. And it's kind of fun,
Oh, that's so funny. It gives you the gift card of time.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a gift card of time.
Oh my gosh. That's a wonderful way of thinking about it.
And you have to spend it today.
Right. It expires. Otherwise,
it expires tomorrow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh. What a wonderful way to think about time in general. It's like you get this gift card of time, and when does it expires today. So you have to
use it now. It's like be here now, all that stuff,
Yeah.
Only slightly more not as profound, perhaps.
Well, I think there's profundity and humor. Like, I think that's a lot.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Oh gosh. When you were talking about also even the subjects of the documentaries, I like that my brain went, humor, the seriousness of the things that you're scoring.
Sure. Yeah.
What was it like at like staying present for the emotions of the documentary? And then also because you did get the chance to actually make this music as Takis, what was it like sorting through those emotions? Because essentially, like, I mean, the pandemic did kind of give you the gift card of a lot of time.
Yeah. And I think like me and Toby, we talked about it, also because we realized that we hadn't really talked about so much. What is this music really about, And we knew that we would probably be asked about it in interviews, so we'd probably better figure out what it was about. And I think we both had the feeling that this music that we've been creating is kind of like, it's a little bit like inspired by some of the stuff that happened, this state of emergency that COVID was, that you take a look at what have I really been doing? All these things that I took for granted, like just, being with people, going out and what have I really been using? What have I been doing with my life, basically?
Right.
And so that kind of inspires. And a lot of the lyrics, I think, are sort of just happen subconsciously are about that, and about the, kind of re-experiencing things in a new light, So, and I think that's important. And hopefully there has been something to be learned from this, I hope that people won't just go back to their usual selves when they can. I hope that there's something that we have learned as a people, from this.
I feel like we're starting to learn that, perhaps. Like, I don't know what's socially happening where you are, but I have noticed, and LA will probably experience another version of, probably not full lockdown, because now there's like there's this growing divide really between like vaccinated and unvaccinated people.
Oh, right.
Which is really, to me, it's very sad, because vaccinations are not just readily available, but at this point, I mean, people are like, there were like promotions like, get your vaccination, come to this shop and get a free donut. Like, people are literally like trying to like bribe people to get vaccinated at this point, because we're like, it's free, come get the thing. And so,
well, I think two things. I think people should realize that getting vaccinated isn't just about themselves. It's not just about you. It's about what you can do to other people. And also, I'm really starting to feel like we live in a post-knowledge society, because it's like everyone has opinions on things that they're not qualified to have. Of course, it's just like, sometimes I sit at dinner parties and I listen to people. Like, I was at a dinner party and this woman was saying like, oh, vaccinations are terrible nowadays because they put heavy metals in them. And back in the old days, they made them naturally, but now they put heavy metals in them. It's like, no, the opposite. They used to put thorium in vaccines as a means to preserve them, just like they used to put lead in paint and still put lead in some forms of gasoline. But they stopped doing that. You're reversing it. You're saying, and I had this huge argument with her, and it's like, and I'm asking, what are your sources? How do you propose to know these things? And it's just like, well, I read between the lines and shit. Like, it's just, oh my God, people are so arrogant. I don't know. It's just, it really, I get that. That is one of the things that make me the most angry. Is just the arrogance of people who have no knowledge and pretend to do. It's just. Oh my God.
I feel you on this so hard. Yeah. There was a TikTok I saw that was like, when someone says they're going to do your own research, and it's like, oh, are you going to get 180,000 subjects and perform a double-blind study? Yeah. It's like, no, I don't think you are. So just review the literature that's there if you really feel like doing some research and make your decision.
Exactly. Yeah.
Don't watch someone ranting on YouTube about, and also, surprise, metals are found in nature. Like, that is not unnatural. It's unwise to use it and potentially hazardous, but it's not unnatural.
No.
So I'm with you on that. And it's
and nature will also give you cancer. So not everything nature gives you is it's just
exactly.
people kind of treat nature as if it's some benign entity that cares about us, like, you know what I mean?
Oh, like nature's chaotic. It doesn't
exactly.
Stuff.
Nature is indifferent, nature is indifferent.
And then
that doesn't mean that it's not splendid and wonderful, but it's just it's not looking out for you.
No. Oh my God. Yeah, so it's leading, at least here, like, people have been joking about it being kind of like the roaring 20s right now, because we do have such a high vaccination rate. So many things open. They did do away with the mask mandate, though. Like, I think that is unwise, frankly, given what we know about how things mutate. That's why I'm like, we're probably going to have some sort of like either mask mandate or some sort of whatever. I don't think we'll go into full lockdown again, but like something will have to be done about like the variations that are popping up. But it's so interesting because there was this huge pressure on people to feel like things are, quote, back to normal. And the thing is, one, they're totally not. There is no back to normal. Two, there's no acknowledgement of like the trauma that people suffered throughout all of this. And three, what we had before kind of wasn't working so well. So why would we want to do that?
Yeah. True.
And so
very true.
There's this ambivalence that I'm seeing in people, at least here, and that's why I was curious what it was like there, where it's like in some ways people want to put on the appearance of playing along, but also there are other people who have no interest in that and are like, no, this is wrong. Like, please stop saying that this is all normal, or that we shouldn't feel anxious, or that we shouldn't acknowledge what happened. That's actually like really inhumane. And they want to change things. Yeah,
it's a little bit like you shouldn't tell, if you have a child and your child is upset about something, you shouldn't say it's nothing to be upset about, because the child is already upset. It's not going to reset itself by you saying, "Oh, you shouldn't feel that way,"
Right.
So
that surprisingly works with 0% of people.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious what will happen there, because I have seen, at least with my immediate circle of people, that there have been changes. Like, I think that people are more cognizant of people's boundaries, which is really cool.
Yeah.
People are rethinking how they want to go forward. Even like, I mean, it's so strange thinking about releasing music right now and shows and all those things, because it's like, okay, of course we're still going to make art, but it's like, how do we responsibly share that art and travel to people and take care of each other while making art? It's like, I feel like people have kind of redefined even what that is. And right now it's in its kind of mushy stage.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, part of me is afraid that things will people have been so sort of kind of missing out on things that they're going to be desperate to go back to normal, and just kind of, but and in a way, who can blame, I feel the same way in some ways, but yeah, it's been quite an ordeal for everyone, I think, and obviously for some much more than others, but it's just it's definitely something that we'll remember, we'll think back on in 30 years. Like, do you remember the time? It's almost like, well, not quite like a war, but, something kind of really life altering,
Well, and it's strange to think about, like, I don't know if you encountered this, but I had not learned about the effects of the Spanish flu and like the different waves of it and all of that, and like basically the parallels to what's going on now of like, it was after, I mean, we didn't just have a world war, we just have constant wars. That's depressing.
Yeah.
But it was, learning about how people then behaved afterwards, despite like the rise of things like fascism and totalitarianism. because they were so, like you said, like desperate to return to like normal and return to joy and things like that. But I don't know about your history class. Like I learned that there was like, it was like, and then there was influenza, but like it was like a footnote. And like I didn't realize how, you know, it then affected people's psychology then the following decade. And then like people didn't talk about it. And so I'm so curious now that we have this, like the way that we share information is so different than a century ago.
Yeah.
That it's like we can't globally forget something anymore. Like you can't be essentially gaslit into thinking that didn't happen. And so I'm wondering like what the effects will be that are very different than, for instance, that pandemic incident.
Yeah. I think the way that information is spread now is, both it has its upside, which is that it reaches everywhere, but the huge downside is that there's so much disinformation or misinformation out there as well.
Yes.
And every week or so there's some person, a friend of mine on Facebook or whatever, who I consider an intelligent person, who will post this article saying that HPV vaccines cause autism or something, which is provably wrong and was started by a fraudulent study and all that. And even to this day, it's like people still, because they read it somewhere and then they just, it must be true, Right. It's kind of, and what really strikes like all the conspiracy theorists is like they read stuff on Reddit and they will believe that, but they will just immediately be suspicious of anything that's in the accredited news forum, which is like, why, how? Okay, well then just don't believe anything. Why would you then believe this weird kind of sketchy website? Right. With I don't know. It's just, it seems so weird. It's like you pick and choose what to believe in,
Yeah, it's fascinating living in this time, because I remember as a kid thinking like, wow, like look, I really liked learning about like history and mythology and whatnot. And I was like, imagine living through these like epic, like world altering times. And now I'm like, whoops, like would have preferred otherwise.
Yeah. Right.
I was like, couldn't it have been like, I don't know, boring year, like 1832? I don't know, seemed kind of banal. Like, it's like,
oh, true.
Like, oh well, guess I had to live through historic times. But that
we get to live longer now, which I think is an upside too.
That is an upside. It'll be very interesting seeing what happens. I like that you called it like post knowledge, because I have heard people referring to it as like post truth, things like that, which then affect where we get our information from, and also then how we synthesize that and put it out into the world, whether it's through like how we talk to our friends or what art we make or what we choose to do.
Yeah.
Where in a way it can be freeing, where you can be like, yeah, I do like 7 things at the same time. Or it can be like, yeah, I believe this conspiracy theory that like lizard people are taking over the world that I read.
Yeah, that I'll believe, but I won't believe that. I don't know.
It's become very choose your own adventure.
Absolutely. Oh, you remember those books?
Oh my God, I loved those books, and I would read them out of order without like actually having it predicated on which page to choose. I don't know why I'm that chaotic, but I would totally do that.
Yeah, I love those. The first one I got was translated into Danish. It was like The Wizard at the Mountain of Fire or something like that.
Oh, wow.
And it had a mistake in it, so you actually couldn't. There was no way to complete it. It's like there was a wrong. They got something wrong, So
you got like the Escher painting of Choose Your Own Adventure.
Yes. Oh, yes. Very true. It's like, hang on. I just turned right. Why am I?
Yeah. I was on these stairs. I'm still on these stairs. Why?
Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. And like thinking about, in a way, like it can lead to obviously really tragic things, like people believing like misinformation. But having all of these routes open, like, I mean, it's even the premise of the podcast, like it can lead people to following what used to be what one would define as like a really unconventional life path but now that's it's possible because, especially as we've seen in the last year, so many of our structures are kind of meaningless.
Yeah. Right.
And
how do you mean exactly? How are they meaningless?
Like the whole you have to go into an office thing. No one has to actually do that.
Like that's a bit scary though as well. Like imagine just, we'll all become shut-ins. The same thing with like nobody shops in shops anymore. It's all online. You never have to leave your apartment. That's kind of depressing as well,
Like if you never leave, it's depressing, but if you leave with purpose, then it's exciting.
Yeah, okay, true. But I don't know. I think if I worked in an office, I would prefer that to just being home all day. Like just, you have lunch with your colleagues and you talk around the coffee machine, that kind of thing. I don't know.
See, that's the fun bit for sure. Like my friends during this time, even like right before COVID, what we would do is, since most of us aren't like necessarily like working in offices or things like that, we would get together to work like once or twice a week.
Yeah.
To get exactly what you're talking about, because I guess that to me is like the purpose behind it, where it's like, you don't need to be in an office all the time, but you do want to be in a group some of the time because of exactly what you're talking about, that camaraderie and that sense of structure and like, all that stuff. Or like the structure of when you were talking about like having the gift card of time for reading, it's like, why are we made to think that we don't have that time?
Yeah. It's weird. Like I also get this, I love when it rains in the summer. Like it's raining a lot here in Copenhagen. It's been really hot when it's raining, and there's something nice about it. It's kind of moody and there's an atmosphere, but also I when I sit and work, I don't feel like, oh my God, I'm missing out on all the fun stuff outside, because because it's raining, and then you just don't think about it.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's sunny, you think of all your friends who are like getting together for a beer in the park or whatever, and you're just sitting here slaving away.
Yep. Yep.
But really, it doesn't. There's no difference, is there? Because you're not going to be part of it either way. So right.
A friend of mine tweeted something that I loved, because like in English there's like FOMO, like the fear of missing out, and she tweeted JOMO, which she called the joy of missing out.
Oh, right. I like that. Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, that's amazing, because of exactly what you're talking about, where like sometimes we almost need like permission to not do a million things.
Yeah, exactly. And there's also this, I think that people are afraid of boredom, maybe, or like it seems to me like people now, if you have a meal, you have to watch a TV series at the same time,
right? And
be on your phone, so you're not really following the episode because you're also kind of checking your Instagram, whatever. Like it's just like you have to have everything at once all the time, And if you're waiting for a train somewhere and you run out of juice on your phone, it's like it's terrible. It's like what are you actually gonna do? It's like being in prison or something. Yeah. And I don't know. It's just like we make ourselves so addicted to this, and and it doesn't make us happy, that's the most stupid part of it. It's like, Yeah.
I'm curious what will happen with our relationship with technology, because like the reason why I said earlier, like that having visuals married to music is how people discover things now, is because of exactly what you're talking about. Like since people are kind of glued to their phone, and so many of the discovery places for music are visual, like Instagram or TikTok or whatever. It's like, you might hear a song in the background of a TikTok, but most people are not going to be so driven that they go and find that song. Some people are. But like on Insta, for instance, if you're scrolling and something catches your eye, that's going to make you then listen to it, which to me is really fascinating.
Right.
And so it's like, visuals are so important right now. I don't think they always will be to music, but I think it's really interesting that they are currently. I guess like what's on the horizon for you? Like you're finishing this score, you have this new music coming out. Like What, it's kind of like your
Well, I have like a just very short vacation, and then we go into rehearsals with Mew, and then have a few shows, but less and less, it seemed. Like every day there's another one that's canceled. So I don't know. It's I don't know how. It'll probably be a very short tour in the end, but and kind of weirdly spread out. But it'll be fun to come out and play again. You know, I've missed that, so that's good.
Yeah. Yes.
And then I'm really excited to put out more Takis songs. I think that it's a very versatile bunch of music we've made, and quite different from anything that either of us have done before, even though you can probably trace some of it back to our respective bands, but it's exciting to put out something new like that.
I'm literally looking forward to, like, when you sent over the videos, I was just like, ooh, I dig this. And I was just like, where was this shot? Like, it looked like the video that Laura originally sent me, it was shot in so many unique places. Like, I was like, where is that home? And then they're dancing on a roadside, and I was like, where is this? Is that
the Tachys video, you mean? Yeah, this was actually done by a guy called he's a photographer, Hugo A. Lopez from Guadalajara. Mm-hmm. And I met him. We were doing a show with Mew, I think it was in 2018, and he came backstage, and he was supposed to take some portraits of us, but we didn't have time. And so I just met him, and we talked for a while, and he showed me some of the stuff he'd done. He's a cool, very young guy. And then I got to know this girl who lives in Guadalajara, and then I just thought, why, it'd be fun to bring them together and ask them if they could do a video for us. So they did that, and then Toby did some of the visual effects and the editing. Mm-hmm. I did a little bit of. I didn't actually work that much on that video, but I think it turned out really great.
I love it.
Yeah,
I'm excited to see more.
Yeah. Well, the next one's going to be very different.
I mean, I feel like that's kind of the experience that you were talking about, that you got to finally come together and collaborate in this way that, there weren't really a lot of rules to it. And that's exciting, because then, I don't know, I like albums that are almost like mixtapes. Yeah,
me too. Yeah. I like it when it kind of goes all over the place, but you still feel like it's the same band. That's the best. Yes. I like it when people experiment, basically. Yeah,
I do too. Like, I guess that's why in my brain it was a mixtape, where it's like, because with mixtape, someone's telling you a story. Like, it is a cohesive thing. Not like every song necessarily. Like, there are some albums that, I do love the converse. Like, for instance, listening to like Cigarettes After Sex, where like every one of their songs, you're like, this is a Cigarettes After Sex song.
Sure. And the same thing with the Beach House.
Yes.
I love that band.
Yes.
But and it's so cool, because it's like, these are the elements that we use, and then we just write really, really good songs, and that's it. That's beautiful.
And then yes. Oh my God, that's so funny. That was the other band that like springs to mind when I think of bands that way. And then there are other bands where you're just like, whoa, that went like a lot of different directions, and I liked all of them, and like where they're going, like, or even bands that really change it up, like album to album. Like, I think of like the way that like Bjork's career has evolved, and like,
sure,
I loved all of her albums for different reasons, and that to me is really cool. And so it's like, I love seeing when someone's just like. And I even respect when someone tries something that I'm not super duper into, because I'm like, I respect that you tried it.
I think that's how it should be. Like, there's certain bands where they have albums that I really like a lot, and then they come out with an album and it's just not for me. But I that doesn't make me want to not buy the next one, because I know that there'll be something totally different again, in a way.
Yes.
So,
And so when someone can pull that off in like a collection of songs, I'm like, oh.
Yeah, true. Oh, I have a song you have to check out. It's this girl from Pennsylvania. She's been writing me on Instagram since she was just sending me like weird like little clay figurines she made.
Wow.
When she was really young, and I never really I saw her pictures. I didn't really respond like as I was lazy or something. But then recently she sent me a song and a video she made for it. And then I was like, oh, okay, let me listen to this song. And I love this song. It's really good. It's called "Say," and she does, she produces everything herself, and her brother plays the drums. And this song called "Say" by Lilito, her name is.
Lilito, I would love to hear that.
Yeah, it's very charming.
Oh.
And it's a really good song, I think. So yeah. Hopefully she'll make a whole album soon. I'm hoping.
Yes. As like a better known artist, there's like that power dynamic. That you don't want to like abuse your power, and you also don't want to like have someone, then only appeal to you because of that. But then it's like when you actually see that person evolve and you're on more equal footing, then like you can have these like beautiful collaborations.
Yeah, definitely. I've done quite a few collaborations recently, like more than I used to. It's been fun, like singing on other people's songs and stuff. It's been a good experience.
Is that similar? I guess like if you have kind of like your own stuff and then you have like the film stuff, I guess like does collaboration kind of like fall in the middle where you're kind of like balancing like your emotional experience and then the emotional experience of someone else?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, definitely. Cool. And it's a nice kind of form of communication with the other artist, and this is your song, and you're respectful with it, and you send something over and hope they like it, Yeah.
Well, and it's interesting when sending little like snippets back and forth, especially like during this situation when you can't always be in the same room, because like creating a collage but like blindfolded.
Right. Yeah.
Does this land?
Yeah, I was part of a project once called Telefono or something. And it was basically this thing where one artist had to record something and send it to another. And there were no rules what you could do. You could like play it in reverse and then overdub on it, or record it really loud, distort the guitars, or you couldn't even hear, or, you could, there's just any. And then they put it on a vinyl. Like, I think they put like every step, and then the final is a mess of things, but kind of enjoyable in
That's really
some
fun.
level. Yeah. It's a little bit like the drawing where you can't see what I drew. You just have to, yeah.
Oh my god, I used to love doing those.
Yeah.
Oh, a musical game of telephone.
You should do it again.
Well, thank you for being so generous with your time. It's been an absolute pleasure getting to chat with you.
Likewise. I think we kind of went everywhere.
Thank you again for listening to this episode of Why Not Both. If you liked what you heard, please make sure to like us and subscribe to us on your preferred podcast platform. You can also come hang out with us on social media. We are at WNB the podcast, both on Instagram and on Twitter. This season, we are brought to you by Under the Radar magazine. Under the Radar is a nationally distributed print, music, and entertainment magazine and website. You can find them at www.undertheradarmag.com, and feel free to support them on Patreon. Extra special thanks to our producer, Laura Studeris, who is literally a rock star. Thanks again, and I look forward to seeing you next episode.